Welcome, friends, to the premiere episode of It's 419. You got a minute? I'm your host, Bobby Stavanis, and I'm happy to have your ears. We've got an exciting show today to kick this thing off. Cody Guy is at the rolling table with me today, and he's got an incredible story for you. We'll be talking about his battles with stage 4 brain cancer and how CBD and THC have helped him through them. So, plug in, roll up, sit back and relax. We're just getting started. Good afternoon, Cody, and thank you very much for sitting down with me at the rolling table for this, our premiere episode of It's 419, You Got a Minute. It's very good to have you with us. I'm sure our listeners are as interested in your story as I was the first time I heard it. So how about we kick it all off with a little bit of background information about yourself. Tell me what's going on with your story as far as dealing with cancer and any personal information you want to throw in there for me.
All right, yeah, sure. So the diagnosis that I had was for brain cancer. Ended up finding out that I have a genetic syndrome that is a disposition towards cancer, multiple different types. Brain being the last, colon being the first.
Wow.
So I grew up in Florida, moved back here to Dallas, and we moved here in May, and I was in the hospital by October.
Wow.
So the brain cancer is called GBM. It's pretty much almost a 100% death rate within 12 to 14 months.
No kidding.
So I think it's 5% that survive after 5 years, if they even get there.
Wow. And now you told me you have been a survivor now for how long?
That was in 2006, so it's 14 going on 15 years next year.
Wow. That is incredible. So with all of the dispositions towards the different types of cancers, how do you account for your survival past the 5 years even?
That is what I would call divine intervention.
Okay.
But also during that time, is concerning cannabis's role in that whole process. I was taking the synthetic form of cannabis that the FDA approves, and it's called Marinol.
Right.
And that was prescribed to me at that time for nausea and appetite. And that also connects to the same receptors that deal with killing cancer cells, or that are on cancer cells that induce the cancer cell death.
Right, the cannabinoid receptors.
During that time, I would have had... What's that?
The cannabinoid receptors.
Yes. So the CB1 receptors are activated by cannabinoids, exogenous and endogenous, so outside and inside.
Right.
And so this Marinol works from the outside. Clearly, it's an exogenous cannabinoid that they're putting into you, and then it activates that endocannabinoid system, which boosts appetite and decreases nausea.
Cool. And
also at the same time, if it's in your bloodstream all the way around anyway, then I believe that was part of what was also taking care of the cancer cells at the time.
Awesome. That's cool. But a synthetic, nevertheless.
Yes.
But
so it would have been a synthetic.
Yeah. Wow. All right.
So long as it activates the CB1 receptor, it's going to work. It's
exactly.
Just all about the activation.
Exactly right. Gotcha. So you also spoke with me about undergoing a surgical chemotherapy. I have no idea what that means. Would you mind explaining that?
I just had surgery first, and then, of course, chemo and radiation afterwards. So I did have the surgery and the chemo.
Oh, okay.
Afterward.
All right. Okay, I got you. All right.
Now, what's really interesting about the type of chemo is that it's not intravenous. It's pill form so that it can penetrate the blood-brain barrier.
Gotcha.
And the type of chemo also, the name of it is temozolomide, or TMZ.
Gotcha.
They've done studies they've done studies with radiation, the type of radiation I had, and that type of chemotherapy in conjunction with cannabinoids, which would have included the Marinol that I was taking at the time.
Right.
And that the Marinol or the cannabinoids primed the radiation that I would have been receiving at that time to receive more, I guess, efficacy for the radiation therapy, and the same thing for the chemotherapy.
So basically, the cannabinoids kick-started the radiation then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it basically makes the cells more available or more susceptible to the radiation damage, while the cells are protected also by cannabinoids surrounding it. So
gotcha. Okay,
it's
cool.
hitting it from all sides at the same time, because I was doing radiation and chemo after the surgery together. And so those two plus the Marinol, according to all the studies that are out there right now concerning these different compounds, work synergistically to impact the tumor growth. And so, we're talking about why am I still here and what exactly has happened. And besides, like I said, besides what I would say is God, it would most definitely be those three in conjunction that work together to make such a good outcome.
How did the actual chemo and the radiation affect you personally?
Well, even though the chemo isn't intravenous, which is way more harder of a treatment, at least in my opinion, although I've never had that when I watched my father go through intravenous chemotherapy. So the chemo definitely had the same effects, though. I lost hair. I'd have to say I don't know if I lost the hair because of the radiation or the chemo, because I did have a little patch of hair left on my head. Yeah. But I was blasted by radiation all around, and I lost all my hair anyway from that alone.
Yeah.
And you can see it in the patterns of where the radiation was directed. So the chemotherapy definitely gave me nausea and vomiting. It lowered my susceptibility, or it lowered my ability to fight off infections. And so I did end up getting an infection during that time. It was taken care of easily, but it still did. It had all the same effects as normal chemotherapy.
Wow. So just I don't even know what the word I'm looking for. Just a different transporter, different way to ingest it, I guess is basically what I'm looking for. That's wild.
All brain tumors, as far as I know from people that have also had this or other brain tumors, a lot of the same medicines used. From what I understand, of course, this one is designed to penetrate the blood-brain barrier, otherwise it wouldn't be able to work in the brain. And this is a primary brain tumor. So it didn't come from anywhere and didn't move anywhere. It was just all contained within the cranial cavity. And the type of that it was, in order to get in there, I can imagine all the other therapies are also going to be in that same type of administration route. So
that was the word I was looking for, administration. Thank you. Okay.
In all the medical literature, they call it the route of administration.
And
there's a lot of them. We can go through that some other time, but there are a lot of them that they list in the federal patent, and also in individual patents for cannabinoids as medicine.
Cool. All right. Well, how did you first find out about CBD as a treatment then for alternatives for cancer then?
So first I heard about the THC aspect.
Okay.
So the THC is the one that's been most studied, and brain cancers are the number one cancer that have been most studied by THC for cannabinoid treatment in cancers.
Uh-huh.
So I learned more about THC because there's more data on it. But there's recently been a study that came out of the British Journal of Medicine, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And specifically, the title of it is like cannabinoids in the treatment, it's cannabidiol in the treatment of cancer. And it also apparently exerts the same type of effects, not through the same mechanisms, but it seems to also induce apoptosis, which is what THC does.
Right.
So back to whenever I first learned about it, I remember seeing something on it on TV, and I also ended up finding a lot of them, excuse me, on a YouTube video where it was just a reel of news reports of cannabis's ability to be able to treat breast cancer, skin cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer.
Right.
There's a lot of ones that have hit the news.
Yeah.
And so just being aware of that really kind of keep me into it. And also being aware of Marinol, learning more about Marinol and how it affects the body. And you don't really have to go all too far in searching before you end up finding cannabis's role.
That's the funny part about it. It's not that difficult to do some research. You know, that's the part that just floors me. You know, it's out there everywhere. Why are people not interested in learning about this? You know, why do people slam the door in your face when you bring the subject up? It just blows me away. But so are you using CBD now? I mean, do you continue to do like a maintenance dose now, or what's your status on all that?
Yeah, I do a CBD tincture, and it's through a store that's located here in town. I ended up meeting the person and, of course, looking at all of the numbers to be able to see what was in there. The THC levels are 0.03 or
Right.
0.3%
Right.
Of THC.
Right.
So I don't know how many milligrams it is, but I know there's at least hopefully a little bit of THC in there.
Right.
To the degree, to any degree that it would do that. But as far as the CBD oil, yes, I definitely am on that.
Well,
because I also know that clearly CBD has an effect against cancer.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, hemp and marijuana are basically the same plant. They're the same plant family. They just serve different purposes. One produces the CBD, one produces the THC to a more prevalent degree. But with CBD, what I've found out is that with CBD oil or hemp oil, you're getting very, very trace amounts of THC. I doubt very seriously that you could drink 1,000 milligrams of hemp oil and get any kind of buzz from THC. That's basically my point there. You know, I don't think you could sit down with a 16-ounce bottle of it and get a buzz.
Now there are cannabinoids and terpenes. Terpenes are what makes the smell, and there's flavonoids, which is where you get your flavors from.
Right.
And some of those, like linalool, is like where we get lavender.
Right.
And so that same terpene in there, you can take a handful of lavender and take a deep breath, into your nose with it. Just put it up to your face, and you're going to get a clarity of mind feeling. So you might get some sort of feeling from it, but it's definitely not going to be because there's a bunch of THC in it. It's
right.
Maybe some connection between the different terpenes and flavonoids.
That's interesting. My wife sells herbs out of the house, everything but THC and CBD, but she goes through a ton of lavender, and you just woke me up. I'm gonna have to go in and snort some lavender, I reckon. See if I can get some clarity of my mind here. But
something I wanted to touch on real quick, just concerning the distinction between what marijuana, cannabis, and CBD and THC. So
okay, please.
You're right. They're all the exact same plant, just cannabis, period. Mm-hmm. But then there's cannabis sativa, cannabis indica, and then there's actually a cannabis ruderalis, which is what an auto-flowering plant, meaning that it flowers on its own with time.
Okay.
The other ones have to have each other to make seeds and pollinate a male and a female plant.
Right.
But anyway, so the reason that we have what we call marijuana is because the history behind it we can get into another time. But
Right.
it's basically, it was a slang term applying to what we've always called cannabis. The medical industry at the time was growing tons and tons of pounds of cannabis in the U.S., and it was used by doctors, and that's how it was
Right.
termed all throughout the medical literature, was cannabis.
Right.
And the word marijuana was brought in so that the medical community wouldn't recognize whenever they were going against this marijuana, they wouldn't pick up on it and say, hey, they're going against cannabis, which is medicine we use. And they got, I mean, this is just part of the history. So anyway.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so naturally the plant is low in THC. And since the plant has been used recreationally and medicinally, it has been bred to have higher levels of THC. So whenever you hear a politician or somebody say it's marijuana versus hemp, hemp just means it's low THC. It hasn't been bred up to the high THC. So that's the distinction they try and make. But either way, marijuana, the plant that they're talking about, is the cannabis hemp plant.
That's wild. That is very interesting. I did not know that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention and our listeners. I appreciate it. I really do.
Yeah.
I had never even thought about that. I always thought they were simply two different forms of the same plant.
Well, they're the same, but now you have indica and sativa. And indicas are shorter, stouter, and grow out like a Christmas tree. Sativas are very tall and reach up to 20 feet sometimes.
Right.
And very spindly. The sativas are primarily used for fiber, and indicas aren't necessarily used for that. They're usually used for medicine. But both of them, you can have what they call a chemo, like they have a phenotype, or you can have a chemotype over the plants. So you can have the exact same chemical ratios and content in an indica as you do in a sativa. So they are two different plants. They're two different phenotypes of a plant, but they can also have the exact same chemotype.
That is very interesting. Thank you very much. You enlightened me. This is an educational show to be certain. Thank you. So, all right. You talked to me the other day about your doctors.
Yes.
You mentioned that they, at least one or two of them, are interested in possibly doing further research into the effects of CBD and THC.
Yes, indeed.
You also said that well, let me ask you this. What prompted them to start doing this research on their own?
They didn't.
They didn't.
I had to, and none of them were really reluctant. In Texas, there was a law passed now that it won't jeopardize their medical license to talk about cannabinoids.
Really?
And, so now they can openly, well, I mean, they can talk about anything they want to, regardless of where they're located.
Right.
But it's safer for them, and I totally understand, for them to avoid getting into that topic, because there's a border somewhere in there, and it's not perfectly clear where.
Wow.
But here we can openly talk about it, and not many people do, but I definitely, because I've been in the science, it relates to my condition.
Right.
Not only concerning cancer, but the brain tumor itself was right on my motor strip, and so it caused seizures. So I also have a seizure disorder because of the location of the tumor.
Wow.
And so if cannabinoids can treat both cancer and seizures, then this is right up my alley, and this is where I'm primarily focused. And so they know that, and they're aware. And I've discussed different things with them. Some of them are more receptive than others.
Yeah.
But that's how it goes.
That's how it goes. I'm hoping, the reason I brought that up is because, to me, just in my personal experience, I've been through doctor after doctor after doctor, and nobody in the state of Alabama now, nobody wants to even think about talking about CBD or THC as a cancer treatment. I mean, I went from the top of the list from the lead urologist all the way down to a certified nurse practitioner. And they just, doctor after doctor just refused to talk to me because I absolutely refused chemo and radiation. I was bound and determined to treat with CBD or die trying. And that's where I was at. So to me, just having a doctor say that he's interested in doing more research on it is a huge, huge step forward. I'm happy to hear that, really happy. Is there any kind of information that you can share with us about where are these doctors located that you've been seeing?
So I'm in Dallas, and I started out at Parkland Hospital, and I don't remember if I mentioned it to anybody at that time. Actually, I did. I mentioned it to my radiologist and my chemo doctor because she was the one prescribing me the Marinol.
Okay.
And so I was trying to, as I was learning during that time, I was trying to engage them with the information. I didn't have what I knew. I mean, I know way more now, so I didn't.
Right.
I wasn't equipped well back then, so I just worked with what I had, which wasn't much. I had gotten a hold of there's a patent, cannabinoids as anti-cancer agents.
Right.
And that patent actually lists lung, breast, brain, prostate, skin, colon, and I can't remember. There's a few other ones that are in this patent that are treatable by cannabinoids.
Wow.
And that was what I took to them, and I showed them that, hey, this is all here. What do you think about it?
Right.
Now my radiologist listened to me, but I kept going to him, and I didn't realize, he was like, I need a double-blind phase 2, study before I can do anything about it.
Right.
And I guess I kind of annoyed him with it. And
yeah.
We just stopped talking about it at one point in time, and it was just because, there was nothing he could do about it. I thought he could, that kind of thing. So,
right.
But now, whenever that was the radiation doctor, and the chemo doctor, I was telling her about the Marinol and that it wasn't working, and that if I took it, it might work, and 8 hours later, all of a sudden, it hit me big time.
Right.
And so I was telling her that, and I said, well, finally, it's like a gel cap, so I just punctured it, and I squeezed it out under my tongue.
Right.
And I told her that. I said, well, what did it do? She was like, wait, what? How did it work? And it really didn't work that well at that time. I didn't really know what I was doing. I did that and then swallowed it quickly, and it just didn't really do anything. And I told her that. But her having that surprised look on her face was exciting for me, that she was interested in wanting to know how did it work whenever it was not in pill form.
Right on.
Encapsulated or whatever. So fast forward now, my neuro-oncologist is at UT Southwestern.
Okay.
And I am, according to him, from what I'm aware of, the longest living survivor of glioblastoma, GBM, or grade 4 brain cancer.
Wow.
Stage 4, whatever it would be.
Whoa, you say glioblastoma?
Yes, so that's GBM is what people will do it as. It's the type of tumor that took McCain out, that took Biden's son out, that took Kennedy out. Yeah. That's like, as far as aggressiveness, it's super aggressive, and because the brain is nothing but fat, the tentacles from the tumor can move as fast as they want to. There's no stopping.
Wow.
Yeah. That's why usually it's so deadly, because of that.
And you said you were stage 4?
Yes. The GBM is a stage 4.
It is,
prior
okay.
to that,
all right.
They're called different things.
I got you. Wow. And I've got goosebumps, dude, sitting here just thinking about you surviving for 14 years when they said that nobody lives past 5. That's just
well, actually, nobody lives past 14 months. But my mom told them that, like, at the time I was 20, but my mom was still very much so involved, and so she told them not to tell me anything.
Right.
And so they didn't. and she told my radiologist the same, and he told me not to look it up, not to ask questions, just eat healthy, keep coming to your appointments, and we'll get through this kind of thing. And I'm so glad I never did.
Yeah.
So glad.
Wow.
And that was a good radiologist. That's a good doctor to say that, because some would just be like, look it up, and then walk out the door instead of actually saying, like, you don't want to know.
Right.
And he didn't even say that. It was just him saying, focus on this, focus on this, focus on this, don't ask questions.
Right. Wow.
I mean, ask questions concerning my treatment.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
Look up the condition.
Yeah. That's pretty wild. I mean, that's just pretty wild.
Out of mind, man, out of sight.
Right. Well, okay, so you live in Texas.
Yeah.
What is the current status for medical marijuana in Texas? Is it legal? Are they fighting to get it legal? What's going on with it down there?
So the problem is that we have politicians that are basically illegally practicing medicine.
Yeah.
So they're dictating for the doctors how much we can have, how much access we can have, how many milligrams we can have. So the doctors' hands are tied by legislators, basically.
Yeah.
And specifically those in the Senate and the Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Those are the big, the ones that we're really having to deal with that aren't, agreeing with the data. That's all we're asking for is follow the data. Don't agree with us, just agree with the data.
Yeah.
And follow the evidence where it goes, and let's do something with it, because every state that borders us is surpassing us in the science and technology. I mean, we're supposed to be the big, great state, the first one leading the pack, don't mess with Texas, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But we're nowhere near that. We're not living up to that at all in this state when it comes to the science. So anyway, as far as we're trying to get, at least for me, with my doctors, I wanted to be able to, finish this up with you also, because I know the question was asked concerning it. But the doctors that I have are interested. I've spent a lot of time, more time than would normally be spent with somebody, probably because of the diagnosis and where I'm at, surviving and all that.
Right.
Showing and going through the data with these guys, the history behind the illegality of it, just everything. And they were specifically one doctor, and they're open. The deal is that he needs, because they don't have access to anything, the ability to do anything, he wants me to find somebody that has used cannabis-only medicine, for cancer treatment.
Right.
No radiation, no chemotherapy, no surgery, just cannabis. And then he wants to get a hold of their medical records.
Okay.
Now, of course, this would be with their permission. It's not like we're going behind their backs or something. So
right.
He wants them to get their medical records to look at this, and specifically for brain cancer, if we can. So that's where the interest is, but the problem is this one's a young doctor, and the deal is most doctors do want to help. They just have a bunch of people and a bunch of stoners going up there and be like, you can't be banned marijuana.
Right.
And that's going to push them away. These guys have been in middle school, and they got peers that they can't, they got to toe the party line at the same time.
True.
So this younger generation, though, wants to know more. And they're asking more questions because they're realizing their own teachers didn't know anything about this stuff.
Right.
So what we need to be doing, and what I'm focusing on right now, is educating the politicians enough so that they can see that we need to make a move on this in Texas and allow the hospitals access to this medicine. And that way they can start studying it, because they want to study it. We're ready to study it. We can lead the pack. We can be that great state.
Right.
But we're the one state that's probably going to be the last one in the union to do it. So,
that's a shame.
But that's the whole goal, is because the doctors need capital. They need funds to be able to run these studies.
Exactly.
They can't get them.
Yeah.
No funders, no financiers are going to put money into a hospital to do a study that they can't even do.
That's the thing.
It's a liability on it.
Well, and I think part of that is because it is a class 1 drug. Because when it's classified as a class 1 drug, you're saying it has no medical value.
Right.
That's part of the reason behind being a class 1 drug. Well, if that's the case, then why isn't alcohol considered a class 1 drug or tobacco considered a class 1 drug? They have absolutely no medical value.
Even the cocaine is on, or even cocaine is a Schedule 2.
Yeah. You know, well, Xanax is a Schedule 4.
And cannabis is actually in the same schedule as meth and heroin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just unreal.
Well, whenever we look at it from a federal level, clearly we're not going to be able to. I don't believe that they're ever going to give that up. The Department of Health and Human Services takes their cue from the DEA, and the DEA is not going to lose any employees or get any smaller. The department's not going to downsize.
Right.
So what's going to have to happen is all the states are going to have to do it on their own, and then after that, they'll be like, well, you can keep it that way. But they're probably going to always keep it there because the history behind it and the amount of time they've invested and the propaganda they've put out there, I don't think they're going to be able to bring themselves to do it. So I think the states are going to have to do it on their own, and they can. If we can have hemp, at least hemp, then we can use cannabidiol. Now that we know that cannabidiol does a lot of the same functions, even without THC, we can get funding for the CBD because it's legal in the state.
Right.
The problem is that the politicians are mandating how much and who and when and where, and that's just practicing medicine without a license.
That's exactly what it is. You know.
Yeah.
And to me, I think every politician that votes against it ought to be sued. You know, I mean, I really think so. I mean, I think it's gotten to the point where it's now there's enough evidence out there that now when you deny it, it's downright criminal. That's where I'm at on it.
The case can be made against the Department of Health and Human Services because they own a federal patent, and the patent itself, literally the wording within the patent, prevent, treat, delay, arrest, for 56 different conditions that I've read in there. And each one of those conditions have multiple sub-conditions under them, like heart disease. One of the actual things that it says it treats, age-related diseases. How many diseases are age-related? And at what age do you get diseases?
Right. Wow.
So the federal government knows that it's therapeutic. It's in their patent. So that's what I mean. Like, for one, nobody seems to know much about this patent. So if that was taken out more, I think that will, of course, raise eyes and understand that they used our money to fund the research and are now keeping it illegal for us to access.
Right. And that's the thing that really gets me too. They've got a patent on it. The federal government has the patent.
Given the patent has expired, but that doesn't mean that they didn't use tax dollar money to fund the research and actually put it out there.
Thank you very much. Yep, medicine. Exactly right.
Yep. Expired. The data is still data regardless.
Exactly right. And I mean, it was, I'm thinking 1848, cannabis was still listed in the pharmacopoeia until 1851. In 1849, they decided to take it out. All right, because of the history behind it. The propaganda that had started over cannabis, marijuana. The absolute BS that was brought to reign against cannabis. The propaganda that started back then, it was it was well defined in the pharmacopoeia until 1849.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and...
Oh, no, actually, so check this out. It's actually till 1942.
1942?
It was removed from the... Yep, it was moved from the pharmacopoeia in 1942.
You're right.
So in
My
the
bad.
In the 1800s, well, no, I just learned that one not long ago. So I had to go and check it on my documents to make sure.
Gotcha. Okay.
O'Shaughnessy brought the
O'Shaughnessy.
first cannabis back in 18 something. I don't remember what year that one was, but yeah. So it was here, and in the 1930s, whenever everything started getting the lockdown, and they started locking down on it, they were growing 60,000 pounds a year for the medical community in the U.S.
Yeah. And just one guy, and for the life of me, I can't remember his name right now. One guy gets up in front of the Senate and throws a tirade about how marijuana is going to be the downfall of the American society, and they prohibit it, you know, from everything. It's just, it's crazy. It's mind boggling. But anyhow, so what do you think then is the major hurdle that we have to get over in order to get the legislation going the right direction?
I think a lot of it is just towing the line. I think that I'm more of a conservative. I don't agree with everything that's going on now. I'm more really just a libertarian.
Right.
I don't really affiliate with one party over another. I just have independent ideas that are more so to the right.
I got you.
So I think the right is trying to get away from the left, and the left is the one that's kind of trying to bring this, because the liberals are the ones that are liberating this plant around the country.
Right.
That the right wants to do everything but that.
Right.
So they're like, no, we have to conserve our values, but they don't realize that part of their values is preserving life.
Exactly
preserving
right.
Life to do with medicine as well.
Yep.
I am outright a Christian. I'm an apologist, so I debate other religions, I debate other ideologies, I debate Christians within Christianity about biblical perspectives and historical perspectives on the faith. So I'm not just saying I'm a Christian, quote unquote. Right. And a lot of these people don't even think about it, and there's a good verse that they should consider. There's a lot of them verses, but the main one is that Jesus, in the temple, they tested Jesus to see if he was going to break the law. And they put up this guy that had a withered hand. My left hand is withered somewhat because the tumor was on the right side. Okay. But whenever they tested him to see if he was going to break the law to heal the man, Jesus questioned him and said, if you had a sheep that fell into a hole, would you not immediately lift it up? And how much more of a life is the value of the life of a man than a sheep? And so Jesus considered the quality of life over law. Right. And so if a law says that you can't do something that is going to bring you a better quality of life, then as conservatives here in Texas, majority, they should be in favor of that. You need to change the law. Yeah, absolutely. But changing the law is first changing the minds and hearts. Right. Yeah. Well, now, I want to give a shout out to another fella down in your neck of the woods. Fella goes by the name of Gramps. He does a page of his own called Something Has to Change and Now. He's got some monstrous videos out there. His son died from epileptic seizures because he couldn't use CBD or THC. And that's what prompted him to start his page up. In one of his videos, there's a lady by the name of Amanda Hughes, who is also from Texas. She works for a program, her own program called Higher Education Texas. And she
I don't know. I mean, I guess you know of her down there, but she's done some really awesome educational seminars and so on. You might be interested in checking those out or touching base with her and see what kind of stuff y'all can do together. It might help get this situation rolling a little quicker. I don't know.
Oh yes, she works with an amazing organization. It's called Americans for Safe Access,
Okay.
and to me, that's the most professional organization within this game that operates to provide access to patients and get all this stuff. And so it's not necessarily, I don't think, all about recreational, complete, full legalization, but at least let's get the medicine going.
At least get the medical out there, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to wait.
Exactly. I mean, that's what we just talked about. If it's going to bring about a better quality of life, then change the law, man. Change the law. It's got to change. Anyhow, well, I guess that pretty much brings us to a close, unless you have something else you'd like to add in there.
Nothing right now. I look forward to being able to do other ones that we can focus in on, because there's a lot of stuff. You can make an episode concerning the history, so we know the history from before all the way up to legality, and then since then till now, and why it's still illegal. I think your viewers or listeners will be very much so interested in all of that. So
I agree. I agree. That's exactly what I'm looking for, man. I mean, I've got shows lined up already, but I'm always looking for more material. So
sounds good.
Anything you want to suggest, I'm all ears, man. All right.
All right. So this is what I'll say, I guess, to those who are listening.
All right.
Whenever it comes to getting involved with this, the main thing is to talk to legislators. And it sounds intimidating. In reality, you're not going to talk to the legislator. You totally can. But I'm saying, if you want to do it, the least that you can or the most that you can and feel comfortable with, you can call the office. Their secretary will answer. And most of these girls and guys that answer the phone are wonderful people. They're there to help. They want to get the message over there to the person.
Right.
That is your representative. And if they know sincerely that you want it, and I would, of course, push towards personal testimony, interactions you've had with people. So this isn't just, hey, I want it legalized, man. It's,
right.
I want to see the science further. That's where it's really at. Because furthering science is a good thing. And if they don't agree with furthering science and they want to be behind in the nation when all this stuff is going forward and there's patents on it, that's where you can really stick them with it, is that if they're not willing to learn more and to further this science, then they're basically against furthering the science. I mean, I just don't know how else to word it. But so getting a hold of that office and just leaving a message, it takes all of 20 minutes. They're not trying to stay on the phone with you.
Right.
They want to just leave a message and send it over to the person.
Right.
And so what you have to do is let them know that, and don't be like cannabis and cancer or marijuana and cancer. Try and use only cannabis, because we're trying to bring it back to that. They stole the word, or they got rid of the word, and we want it to be back on
there you go.
The proper Latin word.
There you go. I like that.
So, just get a hold of them. Tell them what you want to see for yourself in the state. And they're all ears. Now, whether or not they listen or whether they get back with you, that's another thing. And one thing for sure is, don't call them frustrated. They need to not hear your voice as frustrated, because then they just kind of put you in this category along with everybody else.
Yeah, this is true.
Be polite. Basically kiss their butt is what I'm saying. Like, make sure that they know that you respect them and you value their position and try to get a hold of this stuff.
Exactly right. Very good information. Very good advice. I like it.
All right.
All righty. Well, looks like I got some work ahead of me for the rest of this evening now. I appreciate it.
Definitely does.
I do appreciate you taking the time out to sit down and talk with us. I really do appreciate your story. I'm just I'm amazed and that's just putting it lightly. I'm amazed that you've come as far as you have. I'm amazed at the work that you're doing right now, and I appreciate you, man. Well, that wraps up this episode, folks. I want to thank y'all for lending me your ears. I hope y'all found Cody's story as fascinating as I did. I hope you found the information useful. I hope you'll subscribe so you don't miss out on any future shows. You can like us on Facebook as well. Please share our link with your friends. We've got plenty more to come. Until then, plug in, roll up, sit back and relax. But don't forget, it's 419. You got a minute?